Hi, my name is Kate Forth, and I am joined by my teammates Drew Jensen, Muskan Walia, and Ashton Zeman. And today we are going to propose our plan for YWCA Utah to be more inclusive for women in Utah politics.
Women are very obviously underrepresented in American politics at large, and in Utah politics in particular. But the reason that they are can be sometimes surprising. The reason that women are underrepresented is because they run less. They don't do any more poorly at the ballot box. They win just as often as their male counterparts once they're on the ballot. The problem is getting them on the ballot. But once we can do that, then we will be able to move forward with our other goals. So what's left then is to understand why women aren't running. There isn't a ton of research in Utah specifically, but we have a lot of research at the national level on why this might happen. Fundamentally, though, women face what's known as a double bind, where they face a lose-lose situation. Women can either buck societal trends and take actions that are traditionally seen as masculine but are mostly required in order to run a successful political campaign, but that requires going against societal trends and doing these kinds of things that can be difficult and frowned upon by society, or they can choose to not undertake this difficult path, but to do so means that you aren't going to run for office. And so because of this, women face a double bind in politics where there is simply no situation that is ideal. This is especially felt in rural areas in Utah where women are particularly underrepresented, where only a tiny fraction of members of the Utah state legislature who represent rural areas are women.
Now, we believe that YWCA Utah should focus on rural counties in Utah. We are defining rural counties in Utah as counties that fall under the 4th, 5th, and 6th class within Utah code. And the counties that we are defining are listed below. Since all of these counties fall within the 4th, 5th, and 6th classes, it means that each of these counties has a population less than 31,000 people. Part of the reason that we believe that YWCA Utah should focus on rural counties is because of the diversity that is in these counties. San Juan County was actually ranked the most diverse county in the state of Utah, and it is followed by other counties such as Millard County, Grand County, and Beaver County, which are all in the top 10 most diverse counties in the state of Utah. Now, this diversity was ranked not only by ethnic diversity, but also economic diversity, which means that YWCA, if they focus on rural communities and making resources for women in rural communities, will have access to women with all different incomes and from all different ethnic backgrounds. In addition to this, Utah's rural counties also have the highest rates of youth dependency. When a place has a high rate of youth dependency, it means that there is a high rate of youth in comparison to the population of those 18 years or older. This means that if YWCA invests in rural communities, they're also investing in the youth of those communities since there are high rates of them. After all, investing in the youth is investing in the future of Utah politics, especially if YWCA creates classes or resources for young women within those communities.
Now that we've provided you all with a general understanding and background of the rural Utah counties that we will be discussing and mentioning within this presentation, I want to go a little bit into depth about the party affiliation within these rural Utah counties. So these rural Utah counties are overwhelmingly Republican. The only exception to this is Grand County, and they sort of have an interesting voter pattern in these past few years. In 2008, they voted for Barack Obama. In 2012, they voted for Mitt Romney. In 2016, they voted for Donald Trump. And in 2020, they voted for Joe Biden. I included an image of the presidential, House, and governor elections for 2020 of our state. And you can see for the presidential election, Grand County voted Democrat within the House. It was overwhelmingly Republican. And for the governor, we see the similar pattern as the presidential elections where Grand County was voting Democrat, but the other counties were voting Republican. Additionally, rural counties in Utah historically and statistically have witnessed higher voter turnout than in our urban areas, and this is largely due to population size. Because these rural counties have a lower population size than urban areas, they don't have to mobilize as many votes. Our rural areas in 2016, the 5 Utah counties with the highest rate of voter turnout were our rural counties. In 2018, we saw a similar pattern. The 5 Utah counties with the highest rate of voter turnout was these 5. Rural counties also witnessed higher voter turnout during the presidential election of 2016 and abnormally high turnout for the midterm election 2 years later. So looking at party affiliation in rural Utah counties by gender, we see that there's about a 50-50 split between men and women and what party, whether Republican or Democrat, they are affiliated with. So outreach in these rural communities is critical because it provides the opportunity to reach audiences of both political affiliations, Democrat and Republican. Rural communities have population diversity, and I really believe that we must take advantage of the representation that women in rural communities, especially those from marginalized groups, will bring to the office.
Looking at the current real women-run resources, they may oftentimes be helpful, but the first problem with them is that they're not as helpful as they can be. For example, the seminars could do great work, but they have uneasy access, right? These seminars on the Real Women Run website themselves are oftentimes outdated, going back from like February to early March. And while these seminars could do great work, inability to actually access them would make women unable to use them. You had to go back to the WYCA website itself in order to find these seminars. Along with this, there is no quick resources that people can access. For example, laws surrounding campaign finance. There was no documents, spreadsheets, stuff like that, that just gave quick information for women looking to run about like campaign finance, the laws and forms surrounding campaigning, and even just how to campaign in general. Quick, easy access resources like that could do a lot of good for education and campaigns for these real women that are running. And then streamlining the process along with getting the knowledge of these resources out would significantly strengthen these resources with very little cost. So why we need to do more for our women? Both students and parents need to have greater knowledge of American governance, especially on the local level. While students oftentimes have to take civic education courses, these courses are not as strong as they can be, and strengthening these courses will both inspire young people, especially young girls, to run for local office. And parents also need to have a rehash on their civic education. These parents took civics education courses years ago and could use a refresher. And along with that, it could again inspire women today to run for office. The lack of a more robust education is harmful here because of a lack of information on basic governance, much less campaigns, that make it harder to access. Having more civics education, specifically more on local government and campaigning, would do a lot of good things here. We need to have programs for both students, the future leaders, and adult women who can run now and make an impact for their local communities. And the best way to do this, we believe, is through social media advertising. We believe that social media is the best way to connect to residents about events, programs, resources, and general information. A more targeted approach to rural women in Utah would make this more effective. So according to the Pew Research Center, 67% of Americans ages 18 to 29 use Instagram, which YWCA Utah has a large following on. Utilizing YWCA's Utah Instagram following to advertise classes, panels, and other events could draw a larger young adult crowd, which fulfills one of YWCA's Utah's outreach goals. Along with this, a social media manager within the marketing campaign of YWCA Utah can make this campaign more effective. Why we believe we need a social media manager is so we have a constant theme, a constant voice, and a constant message to these women. And having a more targeted and focused campaign, prioritizing information about resources and events can significantly strengthen this program.
Another avenue that we can take is provisions through the Utah state government. So all requests for money from the legislator need to go through an appropriations committee, and there are various types of appropriations committees. So some examples include higher education, public education, natural resources, agricultural and environmental equality, And you can visit this site here for a more comprehensive list. However, what's most, the Appropriations Committee that's most pertinent for us is the Public Education Appropriations Committee. And we believe that reaching out to the individuals from the Public Education Appropriations Committee would be the most effective.
So what else can we do? Obviously, the goal is to help recruit more women. To do this, we should look to the success of other fields. STEM fields in particular have had great success in recruiting women, especially from rural areas, and it's been found that the way to successfully recruit women and help women to succeed is to make sure that they have a mentor who can help them navigate the field before them. Having some kind of mentorship program could do a lot of good in this particular area. While social media advertising can be incredibly effective about getting particular pieces of information out, it could also be beneficial to try to partner with rural schools and use the infrastructure that they already have in place to communicate information. Send students home with flyers, hang up posters at the school advertising the different opportunities and programs you might offer.
As I touched on earlier, YWCA Utah's goals are to have outreach to communities that are underrepresented in Utah politics. Not only are women underrepresented, but minority women and women in rural communities aren't represented. This is why YWCA needs to create more resources specifically for rural counties. This will give YWCA the most bang for their buck, because not only will they be increasing diversity economically and ethnically and reaching out to younger demographics, but they'll also be reaching out to rural Utah, which is a very important part of our state, and they don't deserve to be forgotten. Thank you for listening to our presentation today.